Shana Tova. When Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, saw that the Jewish people were threatened by tragedy, he would go to one particular place, recite one particular prayer, light one fire, and ask for one miracle to save the Jews from threat. Because of the holy fire and the faithfulness of the prayer, the miracle was accomplished, averting tragedy. Later, when the Baal Shem Tov's disciple, the Maggid of Mezrich, had to intervene with heaven for the same reason, he went to the same place in the forest, where he told the Master of the universe, God, I do not know how to light the fire, but I can recite the prayer. And again, the miracle was accomplished. Later still, Rabbi Moshe Lev of Sasov, in turn a disciple of the Maggid of Mezrich, went to the forest to save his people. He said, I do not know how to light the fire, and I do not know the prayer, but I can find the place, and this must be sufficient. And once again, the miracle was accomplished. And finally, when it was the turn of Rabbi Israel of Rizhin, the great-grandson of the Maggid of Mezrich, who, to avert the threat, sat in his armchair, holding his head in his hands and said to God, I am unable to light the fire. I do not know the prayer. I cannot even find the place in the forest. All I can do is tell the story. I hope that is enough. Sometimes telling the story is enough. We tell the story. We learn from it. We add our own voice to it. Then we look internally. We make it our own. We craft it into something new. And it has hints of what came before. This morning, I want to begin with a few stories. Stories that will bring you into our sense of being part of the Jewish people. Today, I want to focus on who we are. The first is a story from 40 years ago. Since 40 is a unifying number in Judaism, 40 years ago, we saved our people again. The Netflix movie that came out this summer, Red Sea Diving Resort, was inspired by a remarkable true-life mission. The Red Sea Diving Resort is the incredible story of a group of Israeli agents and brave Ethiopians who, starting 40 years ago and then continuing for several years, used a deserted holiday retreat in the Sudan as a front to smuggle thousands of Jews from Ethiopia to Israel. The undercover team carrying out the mission is led by the charismatic Ari Kidron and courageous local Kabede Bimro. In a sense, this mission was a response to a timely and urgent need, as there was an internal coup brewing. It was like the Jewish peoplehood version of Argo. But while the movie won't win any Oscars, the message itself was incredible. Our people are our people are our people. And we never leave them behind. We do what we can, we do what we must, and we do what we can't yet even imagine, to make sure that our people not only survive, but thrive. Why do I share this? Because in today's world, it is so easy to live each day in and out without pausing to think about who we are. We can just go along in life and let it happen to us. In his newest book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, Israeli author Yuval Noah Harari writes, "What is our task? Fighting against a world that wants us to live on autopilot." He argues humans think in stories rather than in facts and numbers or equations, and the simpler the story, the better. But he also reminds us that in today's world, we are often controlled by algorithms. We buy what Amazon suggests. We connect with friends and colleagues on social media according to who pops up as a friend suggestion. And so we wonder, are we letting others manipulate us? How do we maintain control over our own story? It is about determining who we are. It is about finding purpose. It's about not standing on the sidelines, hoping that something else happens to us, but it is we who need to make things happen. As we come together for these high holidays to recite liturgy that makes us think about our individual lives, our lives as Jews, and our role in the world, we must use this time to understand what it means to be a part of something larger than ourselves, and how the stories of our people inspire us to be better individuals. For as Rabbi Daniel Hartman said, what makes a Jew is the synthesis of belonging and becoming. What makes a Jew is the synthesis of belonging and becoming. An amalgamation of peoplehood and principle. And this is in many ways what the Maggid of Mezrich was saying. So who are the people and what are the principles that we should emulate in 5780 as we enter into this new year? Today, let us use the state of Israel as our model for sharing our stories and finding our voices for the year ahead. Rabbi Alan Silverstein once said, Zionism affirms the remarkable power of the human spirit. Zionism's first commandment is the Herzl model. If you will it, it is no dream. The Jewish state embodies being a startup nation with a can-do spirit. The Zionist dream has prevailed against all odds. With pride, former Knesset member Michael Oren observed that Zionism revived the ancient Hebrew language, which is now spoken more widely than Danish and Finnish, and will soon surpass Swedish. Zionist organizations have planted hundreds of forests, enabling the land of Israel to uniquely enter the 21st century with more trees than it had at the end of the 19th. Zionism effectively has absorbed immigrants from more than 100 countries as the Jewish destination for inspiration and for refuge. Zionism means that the Jews have re-entered the stage of history, reclaiming the right to determine our own destiny. This past spring, we saw the power of Israel as it launched a rocket into space. They named the rocket Breshit, which means beginning. As Rabbi Jeff Middleman shared, there were probably many reasons that Space IL named its probe Breshit. I like to think that one reason could have been that regardless of how the mission ended and it wasn't as successful as they would have liked, it was a beginning, not an end. Space exploration is hard. Space exploration is risky. Most of all, space exploration deals in things not working the way you expect them to. But it certainly wasn't a failure. It was the next step of Israel's journey to the moon. Space IL gives us a cosmic perspective. We can find awe and inspiration from both the work of these scientists and engineers. How true is this? The work of today coming out of Israel that represent the past and the present, and I believe the future as well, should be a part of the stories that we share on these holidays as inspiration for each of us as we are trying to determine what story will be written about us in this new year. This past year, many of us traveled to Israel together, and it was clear to me that just from the places we visited, the tenacity of the Jewish people was a model for what we need to aspire to in this new year, as we wonder, how do we make sense of our place in this world? We went to numerous places, met incredible people. Here's a snapshot of just a few. When we got to Tel Aviv, we went to two very different places. First, we spent time at the Olympic Experience, a small site just outside the busy metropolis, where we encountered an exhibit that pays tribute to Israeli athletes past and present, who have presented themselves as champions, regardless of how many medals were won. Go Israel baseball, by the way, who just qualified to go to Tokyo. The ability for the Israelis to compete on the world stage less than a century after the state was founded was nothing short of miraculous. But we shouldn't be surprised. Because the next day, we went to the Ayalon Institute, often known as the Bullet Factory. How many of you have been there? I'm seeing nods. Okay, good. Those of you who haven't, you can come on the next trip. The Ayalon Institute was a kibbutz that was fully functioning during the War of Independence. And right under the noses of the British soldiers, the Israeli youth were creating bullets in the basement of a laundry factory in order to win the much-needed War of Independence. The ability to anticipate what was needed to stay a few steps ahead is a story we must share and a lesson that we must integrate. We are not going to be handed our sovereignty on a silver platter, and we need to look out for the youth to see that they survive and thrive. And that is why it was so powerful when we went up north to Yamin Ord, a youth village. Yamin Ord is located on 77 acres atop Mount Carmel. It is a home, it is a school, it is a safe haven to 430 at-risk and immigrant youth from around the world. As Europe slowly recovered from the ravages of World War II and survivors emerged from the horrors of the Nazi concentration camps, the newly founded State of Israel stood as a beacon of hope to these homeless souls, and Yamin Ord Youth Village was founded. And it brought in these Holocaust orphans and immigrant children then and today. You had kids housing kids 70 years ago, with the constant message being, you are the future of Israeli society. And like in the story brought to life again in the Red Sea diving resort, the motto, "No one gets left behind," was felt. As a community, we must always remember to lift one another up. A fourth transformative experience was our encounter with a woman named Sheva Chaya, a glassblower in Sfat. Originally from the States, Sheva Chaya became Ba'alat Tshuva and moved to Israel. She found her passion in glassblowing, but it is clear that her work is a metaphor for life. As she reminded us, we are like clay in the hands of a potter. We are glass, fragile, breakable, but formable. And just as Israel, which emerged from brokenness, bends towards wholeness, we too need to see how we can become whole as we see ourselves in these incredible stories. But what was amazing about Sheva Chaya was not just what she did with her hands, but what she did with the breath, her breath, and the fire. Using different parts of her body, she was able to create something magnificent. I will never forget when Zach, during the presentation, turned to me and said, "Mom, she made this with one tube of glass." You see, if something starts with a clear vision and hard work, it can evolve and something great can be made. We need to look no farther than our sanctuary to know what that means. The stories of the people and the places we encountered in Israel, the learning of the Dead Sea diving resort, and the exploration of Breshit can give us the push we need to think about our own lives in this year ahead. In Jerusalem, on the grounds of Har Herzl, sits the Herzl Museum, a tribute to a king with no crown trying to lead his people. How did the people respond to his vision, his understanding of what needed to be done? Some with excitement, some with pessimism. But we know what his vision brought us. Herzl died at the age of 44. 44. He never saw the state of Israel. But in 1949, 70 years ago, his bones were brought to Jerusalem because we always bring Jews home. We always strive for more. We always aim for greatness, and we do it surrounded by one another. When Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, for the first time, arrived at the liberated Kotel in June 1967, he reflected, "I did not enter the city on my own. Rather, it was streams of endless craving, clinging, dreaming, owing night and day, midnights, years, decades, centuries, millennia, streams of tears, pledging, waiting, from all over the world, from all corners of the earth, carried us of this generation to the wall." This past year, we have grown. We have experienced loss. We have celebrated. We have mourned. We have created. We have seen and heard stories, and we have been adding our own. We have appreciated our failures. We have loved our adventures, and we have taken pride in how our people stood together. For the past several years, at our community Yom HaShoah commemorations, we tell stories, and we listen to the words written by Jewish songwriter Josh Nelson, L'dor vador. These words, which will conclude our sermon today, will be sung, so I hope they will move you to see yourself in our story, to set up a vision for how to be even better, and for you to be proud of who we all are. Shana Tova.